This is running on empty. It is a workshop specifically for caregivers. So we really work hard to provide a space for everybody in the family. ALS is not an individual diagnosis. Of course, the person that is diagnosed says, well, I'm the one that's living with it, and that's absolutely right. And yet the entire family is involved in the diagnosis of the journey. We want to create those spaces for every family member to share their journey, their feelings, because a lot of things are the same and there's some very unique things. This workshop discusses some of those unique things that caregivers experience. And it's a safe place for you to share the many feelings and the fact that your tank may very well be on empty or getting low. And it's okay to acknowledge that. That's what we're going to talk about today, how you can prepare for that as best as possible, recognize the warning signs and say, you know what, I'm getting really close. Here's some things that I need to do. And that's our goal for today, all right? And so I'll keep checking the waiting room as well. So this particular workshop, again, we offer this every other month so that every new family that registers with us has access to it, and those that want it again and again can have it too. This is focused on caregiver burnout and compassion fatigue. And those are two of the big costs of caregiving. And we will really define those again because they are different, but they're related. And this is part of our Caring for Loved Ones series that has a number of different workshops that we do and continue to add. Today, again, if you've seen me on anything, I've got the weirdest analogies sometimes, and I've heard that my whole life and I still keep doing it. So I guess I don't listen very well, but I'm a big believer in toolboxes. I think you have to have a life toolbox. You need to have the tools in it to go to when you need them, and you may not ever need, a particular wrench or a screwdriver. And goodness knows I have hung up a picture in my home with the heel of a shoe and not even used a hammer. So you can certainly use other things, but you got to have tools, right? And that's really what we want to do, is help give you some tools and to put in your toolbox. So today we're going to define the cost of caregiving, give you some of the signs and symptoms. And my guess is that for all of you joining us, there's going to be at least one thing that you're like, yep, that's me. And that means you're in the right spot, because unfortunately, it's perfectly normal given the situation. And that's what we want to make sure you're aware of too. And we'll talk about some prevention tools. Again, that toolbox of how you can help prevent burnout and compassion fatigue, and then the tools to break the cycle and some of those and to help, okay? So let's start off with a true or false. Again, I want this to be interactive and engaging for y'all. Put it in the chat, if you will. Let's use our chat here. True or false? There are 10 million caregivers working in the United States who are unpaid. 10 million. Let me see what we got here. True, true. Sally says false. Sally, why do you say false?
Sorry, I was muted. There's a whole lot more than that.
Sadly, there is. When you hear 10 million, you think 10 million in the United States. That's way too much. And it is. And what's sad is it's way more than that. There, at least in 2020, 53 million unpaid caregivers. So when we talk about burnout and compassion fatigue, it's very real for at least 53 million families, right? That have that dynamic.
Tanya.
Yeah.
But that's not specifically for ALS, is it?
No, that's all caregivers.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the study, I have to go back and look. I think the study, Sally, that I referenced on that was from AARP that they had. when we look at kind of this model of burnout, secondary trauma, and compassion fatigue, it helps understand for those of you that may not have been familiar with compassion fatigue. Who's heard of compassion fatigue? Let me just see a show of hands. Okay. All right. So yeah, a lot of times we think of it in, if you've heard it, you may have heard it with nurses or people that maybe work in an ER or a hospital, and it's a very real for family caregivers too. So when you look at this formula, burnout plus secondary trauma. So when we look at that, secondary trauma is what we're bringing into this equation for compassion fatigue. And it really creates a perfect storm you'll see here with compassion fatigue. When you go back to that, so burnout, caregiver burnout is one thing in itself, plus the secondary trauma. Secondary trauma is taking on the emotional trauma of someone else in some way, shape, or form. Those two combined contribute and lead to compassion fatigue. And we're going to dig into that a little bit more, but it's really important that you know that compassion fatigue has that trauma, secondary trauma component. With every ALS diagnosis, there's trauma. There's trauma before the diagnosis. Symptoms start. What is it? The doctor's appointments, hopes up, hopes down, all of that is trauma. So we know that there's trauma involved for everybody in the ALS diagnosis. For caregivers, there's a secondary trauma. And again, we'll talk about that more, but it looks like those things of someone you love is losing a little bit of their independence every day, their ability to do things. You hurt for them. You hurt for yourself and what you're seeing, but you hurt for your loved one and what they're losing and what they're experiencing. And that's that secondary trauma, all right? So burnout, this is a little bit more of a bigger definition. Burnout is a state of emotional exhaustion that results from failing, wearing out, or feeling totally used up due to too many demands on one's energy, strength, or resources. Compassion fatigue is the physical and mental exhaustion, the emotional withdrawal experienced by those who care for sick or traumatized people over an extended period of time. Unlike burnout, compassion fatigue results from taking on the emotional burden of a patient's agony. And that's just from Webster's dictionary version. The short version of that is the emotional component or trauma, okay? Those are the big differentiating factors. You've got the physical wearing out of burnout and the mental, and then you've got the emotional withdrawal that you have with compassion fatigue. And a lot of times caregivers say, I don't understand why I feel this way. I feel like a monster. I feel awful. You're not. You're experiencing compassion fatigue. If we look at it a step further and really compare the two, burnout, you'll see some of the warning signs here. The emotional outburst, extremely tired. Again, I mentioned at the beginning of this, you would probably look through here and say, oh, I recognize one or more of these. A short fuse, feeling disconnected, more physical ailments. Again, a study in 2020 showed that almost a quarter, it was 22% of caregivers report that their own health has declined since becoming a caregiver. It's declined from fair to poor. So not just, hey, I was doing great and now I'm pretty good. We're talking about fair to poor. And I know just from the many families I talk to every day, so many caregivers say, I haven't gone for my own dental appointment in a year and a half. I haven't gone for my wellness exam in a year and a half. And so those things contribute to your health too. And it's really important that you stay on top of those. Compassion fatigue. Look at the warning signs for that, y'all. It's very, there's some things you can connect, but it's very different. Compassion fatigue resembles depression and PTSD. That's huge. The irritability, anxiety, and anger. Difficulty empathizing with a loved one's suffering. That's a biggie in compassion fatigue. Feeling isolated, insomnia. And again, you can look through here. When I send the recap email to you all with the recording, I'm going to include some screenshots of some of these key things, even though you'll see them in the recording, because I think they're really important for you to go back and look at and stay aware of, right? And say, where am I at? What am I experiencing here? The differentiating factor between the two types of stresses is that burnout emerges over time. That's where your resources in every way are depleted over time. And compassion fatigue, if identified and managed early, has a faster recovery time. And that's one of the big reasons that we offer this workshop for families every other month, is so you stay aware of the warning signs of both so that you can manage early, right? And have that recovery. That is huge. I don't know about y'all, and I always use myself as an example because I know that I'm guilty and I can share from personal experience. A lot of caregivers, and not all certainly, are fix-it people by nature. We fall into a caregiver role, I don't want to say easily, but it's natural to our personality or our gifts. Like if you've seen me and joined on Stress Less on Purpose, we talk about our gifts. 3 of mine from the calling cards are healing wounds, building relationships, and growing things. Well, healing wounds, those are fix-it things, right? So it's natural when my family, my parents are not feeling well, I want to fix it. As a caregiver, do you take it upon yourself to fix everything that is wrong with your loved one? Because what we really have to be mindful of as compassionate people, we mean well, but our main responsibility as a caregiver is to advocate for the person that we love. What they want may be very different from what we want for them. And those are discussions that you need to have. We had a workshop recently with Diana Root about having those essential conversations. You need to have those often. But ultimately, your role as a caregiver is not to fix everything. That adds more stress, right? You can't manage the universe. Years ago, I attended counseling, and this is when I was back in 2006. I was in my first marriage, and one of the first things the counselor had me do was resign from managing the universe. And I had to write a resignation letter and read it to her. And I sobbed, y'all, the ugly tears and the snot and everything, because it was so real and so freeing to say, I can't fix everything. I just can't. And I'm resigning from that and knowing it. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about burnout and compassion fatigue. Is the fix-it part of you adding some of that stress, okay, versus advocating for what your loved one wants. Y'all have heard me talk about a lot of my mentors personally in my life now, people I follow on social media. Brene Brown is one of those. I really love a lot of her work and I can relate to it. I will say that I have heard her say over and over again that empathy is infinite. You never run out. I would argue that from an ALS caregiver perspective, that's untrue. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. And so again, normalizing what you're feeling, that you're in this every day, and the anticipatory grief and hurting yourself and then hurting for your loved one. You can't expect that at some point, without your own tank being refueled and refilled, that you're not going to run out, right? Everybody's got a point, a breaking point. So we're really laying the foundation for being prepared in the sense of, I'm aware of caregiver burnout, I'm aware of compassion fatigue, I know what the warning signs are, and I have a toolbox of what to do when I experience those. And so that's what we want you to leave here with today, and I'll follow up in that email. I put this slide in here because when The Office was on TV, I watched it. I thought it was hilarious. And when I thought about this presentation and being prepared, I thought about The Office and this particular episode where Dwight had created a PowerPoint for the Office team about what to do in case of a fire. He put all this time and effort to it. And if you watch The Office, you know how Dwight is. He didn't feel like they were paying attention, was the upshot. So he said, I'm going to create a little fire and see just how prepared they are. They think they're prepared, but are they prepared? And again, that's the message we want to share with you. We all think we're prepared, and that I'm not going to get burned out. I'm not going to experience compassion fatigue, but are we really prepared? And so Dwight created this fire drill. And as you can see from some of these screenshots, they weren't prepared. They freaked out. They were going through the ceiling. They were tipping over vending machines. They were totally losing it. They didn't have a clue. So it's funny if you ever want to watch a short video and have a laugh, because I believe laughter is a great start at being prepared and dealing with burnout and compassion fatigue. There are truly some days you have the option to laugh and cry. And you can choose maybe to do both, but laughter can always find a way in there somehow. So when we talk about self-care and the importance of maintaining a full tank, there's some key things to keep in mind. Being educated about it, which is what you're doing today. Thank you. I'm glad that you took time out. For those of you that aren't able to join us live and you registered, thank you for saying, I need this and I'm going to watch it when I can. Get educated, seek and accept help. As a caregiver, you need to be able to do that too and say, I need help from family and friends, from our ALS Texas team to reach out. I talk to families every day, all week, that just need to share, to vent, and to hear. Sometimes saying things helps you develop a plan, saying it out loud. That's what we're here for. Meditation and breathing. Finding time for exercise in some way, shape, or form, whether that's walking, practicing your golf swing, chair yoga. And we're going to do a little pause for chair yoga in a minute, because I want to show you how simple it is to take time out for it. And staying connected with others. Look on your screen and see who's around. You can connect with these folks here. They get it. Our men's caregiver group, our women's caregiver group, all of our connection groups throughout the state, those are there for you to connect with others and our team. There were, I mentioned 45 people that registered for this. That's 45 people that understand your experience, so you're not alone. I'm going to send you all some chair yoga. I know yoga is not for everybody, just like groups aren't, but these are really good. They're good if you're working from home, if you are stressed for a moment and you just can't spend an hour on yoga. There's some stretches that you can do. So even just trying the arm exercise behind your back, if y'all want to try that, it just feels so good to stop for a minute and just stretch. And I encourage you to try these. I'm going to send them to you. You can go sit in the kitchen. You can sit in the bedroom. You can sit in the bathroom. Let's just be honest. If you're in the restroom, you could do some of these stretches. And that may be the only time you have during the day. I see Edward doing it. Doesn't it feel good to kind of stretch your shoulders? It feels good. I need to work on my left arm. It doesn't stretch as much as my right. So there's things that you can do. And there's a whole bunch more than this on here for legs, back, and arms. But there's little things you can do to incorporate exercise and stress relief in your day. I shared Brene Brown. Another one of my mentors that's no longer living is Viktor Frankl, and I've talked about Man's Search for Meaning. So many quotes in that book. Between stimulus and response, oops, sorry. I'm trying to do my thing here. Between stimulus, well, good grief, y'all. I'm just gonna leave it there. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. Our response, within our response lies our growth and our freedom. it goes back to that perspective. We can't always control and manage the universe with what's happening around us, but we can choose how we're going to respond to it. And that's a big part of preventing burnout and compassion fatigue. So let's talk about the ABCs of burnout and compassion fatigue. This is going to be one of the slides I send to y'all too. Knowing your warning signs. So remember the slide that I shared that had the warning signs of both? Where do you have any of those? Think about that. Do you have any of those? Okay, those are your warning signs. What are my warning signs? Let me be aware. What do I have going on? Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, and this is your scale, it's subjective. You know you better than anybody. What is a 4 for me and what is a 9? My 4 could be very different from Sally's 4, right? But I need to know what my 4 is. And when I start getting up higher, creeping up there, not when I'm at a 9 or a 10, but when I'm creeping up, I need to reach out to somebody in accountability, whether it's somebody you know from the women's caregiver group, the men's caregiver group, to your ALS Texas team. Again, I have people call me and I love it every day, all day during the week, and say, I'm at a breaking point. Can I just talk? You need to do that. You need to have somebody in your life you can do that with. Schedule a regular check-in with yourself every week. How am I doing? Because, right, we think we're prepared. If we let a month or 2 months go by before we even take a moment to check on ourselves, it's probably not going to be good. Would you agree? It's probably going to be way up on that scale. Remind yourself of the things that you do have control over. What stress relief and self-care strategies do you enjoy? Is it taking a bath, reading, going for a massage? And y'all, I know that you can't spend hours doing that when you're caring for your loved one. Try to incorporate 2 minutes, 5 minutes a day. Just make it a priority. What stress resiliency strategies can you do? Mindfulness, breathing, yoga, the chair yoga, golf, and perspective. Remember that quote from Viktor Frankl, and that space is your power to choose, and that resiliency. And accountability partners, having somebody to talk to and saying, I'm telling you, here's where I'm at right now, and I'm staying on top of it. For a lot of families, whether you are a husband caring for your wife, a wife caring for your husband, there's daughters and sons caring for parents. There's all kinds of dynamics. Those family members who aren't directly involved in the care, they want to know how you're doing too and how they can help. And so being able to share with them, I'm telling you, here's where I'm at and I do need some help. And part of that, I created a family caregiver agreement. It's a gift to help care for the people in our lives that we love most. It also has its cost. It just does. Be aware of the warning signs related to burnout and compassion fatigue, and in a commitment to your own personal well-being, do these things regularly, each week at least. Share your scale. Again, what's a 4 for you? What's a 7 for you? Breathe. Take 5 minutes to left nostril breathe, to do those deep breaths, to break the stress cycle. Check in with others, check in again with yourself and saying, how am I doing? And connecting with your ALS community, connecting with your own friends and family. A lot of times when we get into these stressful situations, it may be like, I'm just going to handle this myself and I just need to focus. Don't tune everybody out. Seek and accept that help. You need it. And more often than not, it's there in some way from someone. I mentioned the groups that we have. There's so many, y'all, throughout the state. Everything is mostly still virtual at this time. So if you are joining us today from Houston and the North Texas group works better for you, the connection group, that Serena and Steve join, and I'm usually on that as well. If that works for you, join it. You don't have to live in North Texas. Just find a group that works for your time and your schedule and connect. You can live anywhere in the state and join anything. We have a women's caregiver group that meets every 2 weeks. It meets tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning. And we have a men's caregiver group that meets once a month. It meets on Monday, July 11th at 11 o'clock. Those are both really strong groups and you can connect with others. I have this slide in here because you all may be saying, you've been talking to us for 25 minutes about stress and things on our plate, and now you're sharing a walk slide. I'm sharing this for your family members, again, who want to help but they don't know how. This is a way that they can find some purpose too and join a team. So keep that in mind. You may not be able to do, or they may not be able to do anything in your home specifically, but there's things that they can do. And this is a great way for your family, if you're able to get outside, to connect with others. We talked about connecting. You can see on these pictures, when you are at one of the walks, you are locking arms with other families that totally share in your fight. And so it's another way that you can connect. And those are all in October. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen so I can see all of you again. And if you could in the chat, before we have some time to actually chat and discuss, would you type in, there's two things I want you to type in the chat. Where are you at today on your stress scale? We talked about a 1 to 10 and what it looks like for you. Put your number in there, if you will. And then share with me if there was anything today that you found helpful so I can keep adding more of that. That's what we want to do. What was most helpful for you today? And feel free to take your microphones off mute and we can have some discussion as well, y'all. This is one of those presentations that we definitely want to leave some time at the end for discussion. It's way, way too important. Thank you, Edward. You're at a 7 though. We definitely want to make sure you're connecting with others because we don't want it any higher than that.
I agree.
Kathy, a 9, being able to identify warning signs. Sally, a 7. Okay. 7 and 9 is high, y'all. You are in the right spot. And checking in, some weeks you're going to be higher than others, but recognizing that you're already at that top half of the 10 means you're getting really close to that caregiver, to the compassion fatigue, right? And the early intervention will break that quicker. Again, if you're being honest, if we're all being honest with each other, I've heard husbands and wives say, I feel like a monster day because I really just don't have it in me, to care as much as I normally do today. And I feel awful. No, it's compassion fatigue. It's normal for the situation that you're in. Now, how do we get you some tools to deal with it? So I don't want any of you, if you get in that situation, to feel like you're, the worst ever and you're isolated. You're very much not alone. Let me see if we have anything else in here. Y'all feel free to chat. Anybody, what are you thinking? What do we need to talk about some more to give you a little bit more tools today? While we're waiting, I want to share too that I know a lot of times the thought or question is, I need help caregiving, and until that happens, my levels are not going to go down because this is every day and there's not a break, right? Caregivers throughout the state in general are in short supply since the pandemic. That's a problem. Finding caregivers that are specialized in ALS is another problem. And then having to show them. Again, I'm only going on what I've heard, but I've heard loved ones saying, I don't have time to show somebody how to do it. I mean, there's just not time to do that. They need to come in and know. So I want to leave you with a thought of maybe rethinking that and seeking out caregivers that you can show the things that you need. And also exploring all of your options. Our ALS Texas team wants you to know as many options as possible that are available to you. And then you seek those out and choose what's best for you and your family. I do want to share, and we talked about this in Essential Conversations, hospice does not mean what a lot of us thought it did years ago. It's not a place necessarily that you take someone that you love, and it can be for years. That assistance is available to you because of an ALS diagnosis. So at least explore all of your options that could provide some relief for you and your self-care, okay? And our team is happy to talk to you about those as well. Any other thoughts or comments today, y'all? Okay, well, I don't want to keep y'all longer than we need to because I know how much you have going on. I really hope that something today was helpful to you that you can go back and look at. Reach out to me, anybody on our team. You know how our team is. If we don't have the best answer for you, we're going to connect you to somebody that does. So just know that you're not alone. I will get this recording out to you just as quickly as possible with the key slides, including the yoga, the chair yoga that you can do as well. You're welcome, Sally. Thanks for joining again. And y'all reach out anytime, okay?
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right. Bye, Edward. Thank you.
Bye-bye.